you to record.
And
Okay.
I'm on air. Going once, twice, three times, went in the air. Great, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good part of day, everyone. Thank you for joining Large Scale Scrum Meetup of New York City, the biggest, the fastest growing, and the first one out there. So thank you for being here with us. Today we have a special guest, speaker, friend, and longtime friend and colleague of mine, Double Punchel. He is Davil is from originally, don't know where you're from, man, but you live in Houston for years, right?
Yes.
You have 17 plus coming 20 years of agile, the A experience, right? Being an A in A space. We don't use the word agile. So
Right.
you're a certified certified Scrum trainer, certified enterprise coach, and certified agile educator, leadership educator, which makes you one of a very few guys out there with with these very unique credentials, which means something, quite frankly. It means they mean the journey you've gone through and the effort and the investment you've made into this. So Dawal is also a local agile community leader, servant leader of his local community in the Houston metro area. He is a frequent speaker and presenter, and I've known and I've seen him doing this, so I can vouch
Oh
for
no,
this. Please mute yourself.
I wouldn't stick
Uh,
those in the drink. The juice in it's probably good though.
yeah, folks, please mute yourselves on entry. Dawa lives with his wife and two children. He is willing to disclose this part of his personal life. He likes to play soccer, and by the way, it's probably football, right? Anyway,
Football, yeah.
and you're a fan of FC Barcelona, which is a great club, and you ride Harley Davidson on sunny days, which is also an amazing thing, right? Um,
Yeah, I love my motorcycle.
yeah,
It's a good getaway. Yeah.
I admire this in a way. So anyway, I encourage participants to reach out without any hesitation to Double after this event if you have any questions, and his information will be fully transparent and available to you. Okay. Without any further ado, I will pass it on to you, Double.
Thank
Take
you.
the floor and kick it off.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for joining. Gene, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? It should
Yeah,
be
yes,
showing.
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So the word teaminess is not in the English dictionary, but I often, when I talk to organizations or even in my training courses, I introduce this term. So secretly, I'm collecting a petition so we can submit it to the Webster's dictionary and add it as a formal word. Informally, we do understand what teaminess is. It's a feeling, no? It's a sense of belonging in a group where you are not just individuals, but you are part of something greater than yourself, a whole. And this team self-managing canvas is something that has evolved over many years of my coaching with organizations, and I'd like to present it today with some foundational information behind it. So, one, it didn't just come about because I'm doing this talk. It's been in practice. I never got around to write about it until Gene asked me to talk about this. So here I am. The All right. So what I'm interested is in sharing how teams influence their organizations. And I also founded my company called Evolve Agility. You can find more about my company by going through my URL. The first concept that I feel is foundational to this topic is the understanding of what is a boundary. If you look at boundaries, oftentimes the mental model we carry is that a boundary is a perimeter. But in reality, boundaries are functional components of any given system. If you look at the design of our ear, it blocks everything, but it lets a sound come through. In other words, it performs a function for the whole system, which is the person or a living thing. The way you connect with your environment is the way you function or you behave or you communicate. In other words, as human beings in social systems, we do some work. If we are in a team, you do something. There are some behaviors that embody what you do. There are also behaviors that represent how you act. I chose this word specifically because we do have filters in the way we interact in different social situations. In other words, you could be really friendly with your friend, but in a work setting, you act or behave differently. At the same time, we talk differently. You see, there are certain norms in our organizations where, for example, it's not okay to use cuss words, when you're in an organizational setting. But if you're drinking beer and shooting pool with your friends, you'll probably be doing that quite a lot. So when we connect with our environment, we are exposing our boundaries, and these boundaries are engaging with the overall ecosystem. There is a hierarchy of influence when we talk about these boundaries. There is the personal influence, and personally, individuals will have a very strong influence on the team, and maybe very rarely a global influence on the organization. Sometimes people who tend to have a large, significant influence over the overall organization get looked upon as leaders, and it's very rare for an individual to overcome the the hierarchy of influence, as we'll see. The team, on the other hand, has a very strong localized influence. In other words, the context in which a team sits influences not only the individuals inside the team, but also the organization that interacts with the team. And finally, the organization has a very strong global influence on the team and also on the individuals or persons. We often try to express this as the culture.
So pretty much you're telling me you're going to give me 4 credits.
All right.
Okay. And what's the total?
Hey,
What's
Frank,
going
you're
to
off
be
mute.
the total?
Or Roman.
Could you please mute yourself, Roman?
All right, let me see if I can mute everyone. No?
Yeah. Otherwise, you have to give it back to me, and I'll do it.
Okay. I will have to figure that out. So for now, I'll assume we'll be up. That's a good example of an individual influence that was very strong, in a Zoom setting. So sometimes it happens, but oftentimes it doesn't. And when we are talking about this hierarchy of influence, one of the key things that I want to point out is it's extremely rare for an individual to influence the whole organization. Now, individually, we might feel that the CEO is the grand poobah of everything and they can influence everything in the organization, but in reality, it's extremely rare. Teams, on the other hand, can have extreme influence, and it really depends on how a team engages with this context. One of the richest teams on the planet was the earlier PayPal team. And if you see over here, they collectively have started unicorns left and right, LinkedIn and Tesla and all the other companies. And you can see the power of a handful of people. If they know how to work well with each other, they can influence the world. When we talk about the concept of boundaries, system boundaries will actively engage to interpret and respond to its environment. So when I'm talking about teaminess, I'm talking at the boundary level. I'm not talking on the inside. So let's explore what happens inside the team from a boundary standpoint of individuals. As a team member, you are always making some kind of trade-off when you are working with other individuals in the team. In other words, say, for example, if I'm a developer, my ideal day, and you could ask this to any individual in your organization to say, can you describe an ideal day for you? And if I'm a developer, I'm able to focus on the work that I need to do. The requirements are completely clear. I am able to do my work, check it in, and call it a day at 5 p.m. But that ideal doesn't exist because in a team, you are expected to work with other people who also have their own ideal. Now, in this situation where there are more than one person involved, somebody has to make an adjustment cost. So if person B sub-optimizes their ideal and pays the adjustment cost, then person A gets the perfect ideal situation. What happens at a team level is when individuals work with each other, they engage in a dynamic where you could end up in a situation where you either have a lose-lose situation. In other words, both individuals on the team have paid the adjustment cost to find the lowest minimum that they can both tolerate amongst each other. Or it could be a complete accommodating situation where the individual is not willing to budge from their ideal, and therefore the other individuals in the team, they have to pay the adjustment cost to the point where they are accommodating all the needs of that particular individual. And of course, as a consequence, they are not able to bring their talent, their skills into the team setting. When we say team, we are essentially talking about an environment where person A and person B are willing to engage in a win-win situation. This is what we mean when we say we are collaborating. And when we are collaborating, the possibility of an outcome that is greater than what the two individuals can provide is quite higher. When you work in a team setting, trust is essential. Now, this trust, it comes from deliberate practice. Sure, we can have like a happy hour or social events, but a team builds practice by actually doing the work that it is expected to do. And the confidence that the members of the team will not take advantage of you. See, no one likes to be the sucker, not even Milton. You see, in team situations, and Milton is a reference to Office Space, who has the last laugh with a pina colada at a beach. No one likes to be in a position where they have to continuously accommodate other individuals in the team. To overcome this internal dynamic of individual team members where they can truly collaborate and not take advantage of each other, we have a common practice of establishing team working agreements. And this should not be news to anyone in the Agile community that Agile teams establish working agreements so they know how to cooperate with each other, how to coordinate with each other, and what will make it a psychologically safe environment for individuals to work with each other. Team working agreements are necessary, but they are not sufficient. When groups are formed, one of the key reasons why groups fail to become teams, and I'm using the choice of words very specifically, is groups are people who come together to do some work. They may or may not have buy-in into the overall outcome of the team. The fundamental need in a group to become a team is to understand who does what. When that does not happen, or that area is left vague and unclear, what you will find is over time, the organization will start influencing this group by asking for a lead, someone who is expected to step in and fill the void. Over time, you see, through practice, a group can become stable and share responsibilities with each other, what we call as a cross-functional self-managing team. But it doesn't happen like that. It takes time, it takes practice, and it takes some understanding of who is doing what in our teams. Some of the key roles and responsibilities that we have to understand is when we talk about responsibilities within a team, there is the formal or the explicit responsibility that comes with the approach that you are choosing for your team's collective work. So if you're using Scrum, you'll probably have explicit responsibilities around who is the product owner, who's the Scrum Master. The organization will also have other explicit expectations on its employees. As a corporate citizen, you might be an internal fire warden or a community lead. These are all explicit expectations from the individuals in the team. Then on the other hand, there are implicit, unsaid expectations from individuals on the team. For example, when the build breaks, everybody instinctively turns to Lance because we know Lance knows how to fix it and he loves to fix it. It is not written down in any job description. We don't explicitly acknowledge it, but we know who fixes the build when it breaks. And then there is the in-between. These are the unsaid, unspoken needs for the team that have to be picked up by someone. For example, who's going to organize our team wiki? Yeah, everyone should be able to do it, but we all defer and play chicken until the last day of the sprint, and then we find the person who's actually going to do that. Yeah, these roles and responsibilities have to be explicitly expressed for a team to become cross-functional. It is a myth that in a cross-functional team, every individual does everything under the sun. What is more common is that individuals bring the skills that they have the ability to bring into the team, and collectively, the team as a whole is cross-functional. Stepping away from the individual boundaries, one of the key things to understand is organizations cannot get real teams on demand. You can't say, I want a team and then have a team the next day. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes commitment from the organization. And this is something a gardener will understand almost intuitively, but it's very hard for some managers to get it at all. Oftentimes when I work with senior managers, I ask, have you ever had a garden? And then my conversations are so much more easier because that metaphor is far more powerful than trying to explain that you can get tomatoes tomorrow. A team has a specific purpose. In other words, you can't expect a tomato plant to grow lemons for you. And this purpose must come from the team. Now, the team will derive its purpose from the broader organizational mission, but the team needs to discuss, decide, and work with the organizational management to explicitly express what their purpose is, because they do real work together. Teams often struggle without any clarity of purpose, because what a team needs is a long-term stability of purpose and also membership. So if members of the team keep changing, they are never going to be able to establish a common purpose or an understanding of who does what, roles and responsibilities, and how we are going to work together. This purpose needs to be supported by the organization. And the most important thing is individuals in the team must see some personal benefit for being part of the team. And I don't mean just collecting a paycheck. It has to be greater than collecting a simple paycheck. Finally, the team needs to acknowledge what constraints are existing for a team. For example, we all are in a situation where we're working through a pandemic and there's no way we all can get together in an office. That's a constraint. So let's acknowledge our constraint so we can then focus on our shared challenges. Answering this question of why we are a team and not just a random group of people who chose to work together is critical. And I like to think of it in terms of what is your purpose, also being explicit about what is not your purpose, things that your team can do but chooses not to do it. And also what are some constraints that hinder the team members to do their work in a certain way. I feel senior management participation and ongoing support is necessary to support the overall purpose or the mission for the team. It also requires that the team acknowledges where they are willing to help, but they will choose not to help, because any distraction from the core purpose is only going to erode away the teaminess of this team towards achieving a common outcome. Lastly, I like to consider a team as a separate organism, something that is different from the individuals in the team. And that is why it's important that when you bring a group of people together and ask them to become a team, you also go through a very simple exercise to help them identify what their team name is. A test for team name is to randomly stop an individual and ask, what team are you part of? If they provide a functional description of the group that they are part of, then they are not part of a team. So for example, if I were to stop an individual and say, so where do you work? I work in the testing department. You know they are not part of a cross-functional team member because their identity is tied to being a member of of a functional group, but not a member of a team that delivers a working product together. Now, for organizations that disrupt the team, change membership, there is no help there. You cut the goose that was laying you golden eggs, and that's totally on the organizational management because they didn't allow the time and the practice that a group of people need in order to become a team. Because the team exchanges a stable product in return for stability from the organization. To put it in Scrum terms, when a team delivers a stable product increment every sprint, the organization leaves that team alone. Because they know that when a team is focused on delivering work, they are trading, right? They are trading the stability of the product for the organization's ability to say, we will not interfere in the ways you work. Now, this team's purpose and what they do evolves over time, but in presence of organizational dysfunctions or a team can break apart. Now, these dysfunctions can come internally from the team members itself or from the larger organizational context. We often question, why do we not do things about the organization or what's going on? I like this quote from the book Life of Pi because no organization or no organism does not have no agency. That would be a dead thing. My washing machine has no agency. I can go in, put in any clothes, press the button, and it does exactly what the button tells it to do as long as the internal wiring is correct. But people are not like that. When they get stressed, they either wait for the stress to build up and then they respond like Milton, or they grow from that stress. So sometimes we find that people and teams, they will demonstrate this unpredictable behavior, and that's their expression of agency. With a team that requires autonomy comes accountability. This picture is from my favorite team, Barcelona, that lost 8-2. It's the worst loss that it had experienced against Bayern Munich recently. And at this point, no individual member of the team can say, I did a great job, I scored a goal. No, as a team, you all lost. So a key aspect for forming a team is to understand that when a team is given this autonomy, the accountability comes with it. And it is therefore important that the team sets its own performance outcomes and it holds its own self accountable. Whenever the organizational system tries to influence and says your team is expected to do X, you should expect that the accountability and the autonomy of the team is eroded. Now, this desire for team autonomy emerges only when everyone in the team shares the same fate. When individuals in the team experience different outcomes based on whatever happened in the sprint or as a team, then you will slowly find that personal autonomy is desired by that group of individuals. In other words, if the organizational influence is very strong and each individual is picked off separately, the team behavior will evolve to say, I'm only responsible for my task, and I do not want to take ownership for the overall team outcome. For organizations, therefore, it's very important to never step into what the team purpose is, but facilitate or coach the team to learn about what their purpose is going to be, because it comes from them. They will hold themselves accountable. When a team sets its own purpose and its own goal, which is in alignment with the broader organizational vision, they also need to be able to set their own measures that increase its own awareness to how they're progressing towards meeting their overall purpose and whether they have actually met their overall purpose or not. So I like to break it down into leading indicators that help team members to know like where they are generally headed. In this picture over here, it's from one of the teams. At the end of the daily scrum, what they were doing was looking at the confidence that they had in meeting the sprint goal every day. And you can see how this as a leading indicator was much powerful because the team collectively discussed what is it that is eroding our confidence? Because when we started our sprint, we felt really confident we'll achieve the sprint goal, but then something must have happened over these days. Over time, these kind of leading indicators helps a team to learn about their own environment and how they can control their destiny. Lagging indicators is for everybody else to know whether the team succeeded or failed, to make incremental progress towards its own performance goals. So when we talk about these performance goals, we are not talking about something that is immediate, but we're talking about very long-term performance goals because we expect our teams to be stable around the purpose for a very long term. Let me digress for a second. Um, the representative heuristic is played out in our organization, in our lives quite a lot. In other words, we will judge the probability by similarity. If you've been a part of a team where a member made an adjustment and took an extra request from the friends and family network in the organization, you should expect that the same individual who pushed an item without the product owner's awareness will come back again the next day and ask another team member to do something else on the side. Because in their mind, what they are saying is, because your team did this before, therefore you will not mind if I ask you again. Because your team member committed to this feature, therefore all of you as a whole are going to be committed to the same feature. We tend to replace the general for particular. And this representative heuristic is quite powerful because teams will get trapped in this dynamic where a individual behavior of the team dictates how the entire team will be perceived and treated by the rest of the organization. By this, I mean the management, the other teams, and folks who are around the team system. There is strength in numbers, especially in social settings. The ability to navigate your social circumstances can be vastly improved if you have a group of people with you. What I find in dysfunctional organizational systems is managers know how to pick off individuals one by one. They never approach a real team as a whole, because what they want to do is to get what they want, and therefore they're going to either go directly to the individual or use the escalation route in order to get what they want. Whenever you ask these dysfunctional managers to work with the whole team, and you could say, come to our refinement meeting or come to our review or sprint planning, their behavior is going to be to use the representative heuristic to their advantage. Yeah, because that's how they get what they want without having to make the adjustment cost of actually understanding what it takes to work effectively with teams. It's a shortcut. People always prefer something that is sweet and short than having to actually figure out how to work with the team. So where a team can turn the representative heuristic on its head is by retraining the people around the team ecosystem. In other words, you are essentially turning the representative heuristic back on its head. And a way you can do that is by explicitly choosing what are we going to encourage in others' interaction with the team. We'll call them amplifiers. What are you going to discourage in others' interactions with us? As a team, it's important that you not only have your internal working agreements, but you also have these external team behavior working agreements, because without these norms, the internal team agreements and the teaminess will get eroded over time. Ta-da. So when I work with teams initially, I like to use this canvas, which talks about the elements that I've presented so far. We talk about what's your team name, what purpose is, and how will the senior management support the overall team purpose. We also need to agree on what it is not, things that we can do, but we will not do anymore because our purpose is different. What constraints exist in our environment that the team needs to be aware of. Internally, what are our working agreements? How are we going to work together as individuals inside the team, and who does what, right? What are our roles? What are some key responsibilities? And then looking externally to say, how are we going to amplify or dampen the organization's influence on the team? setting its own performance goals and knowing its own leading and lagging indicators as a way to hold itself accountable. Because if a team doesn't hold itself accountable, other people will. And the measures that they will choose are not going to be the one that actually help the team in the long run. All social systems and all living systems create, maintain, and degrade their own boundaries. So as you work in your team, be very mindful of how you as an individual is managing your own boundaries, how your team is managing its boundaries with the rest of the organization and other teams in the organization. There is no status quo. In other words, a team will either disintegrate or it will grow. Unfortunately, a team will not just stay where it is forever. And same with people and organizations. Got a few trainings that are upcoming. I've got the advanced CSPO. I'm trying something new by breaking the course into 5 hours per day. And this is virtual. It's on October 12, 13, and 14. The advanced CSM, where I go into the team self-managing canvas as one of the modules that I cover. That's coming up on October 21st, 22nd, and 23. Again, this is again 5 hours a day. And then got Craig Larman, who's a partner with Evolve Agility and similar to Gene, where he partners with Gene in the New York area. Craig partners with us to host courses in Texas, and he's leading a course in November 23, 24, 25 in Houston, Texas. I am on LinkedIn. I also have a newsletter that I send out quite often, and I'm hoping to convert the team self-managing canvas and some other concepts around into a sort of a mini book. So if you sign up, you'll get some cool resources. And of course, I'm available on email if you want to get in contact. I'll share the sign up sheet on the chat for everyone. I'd appreciate if you sign up. And I'm open for any questions or any dialogue you want to have on this topic.
Hey, Dawal, thank you very much for doing this. Folks, since I would like to go low tech in this, so instead of raising yellow thumbs or palms, just wave at us. If you want to ask a question, just ask. Just time box yourself to 30 seconds so that we have more people getting a chance to speak.
Hi, Deval, quick question for you, which is, could you talk about corporate individual performance reviews and your model of a self-organizing, self-motivated team?
Right. Let me share the screen again so we can talk about the same thing at the same time. Yeah. Okay. These are separate from the individual performance goals. Now, there's a lot of literature on why you should not have individual performance goals, but that's not the reality for many organizations. So one of the key discussions that need to happen at the team level is to be aware about what are the individual goals that are being set and how they align or misalign with the overall team performance goals. You would expect a facilitator or a senior management. That's why I ask for the senior manager to be involved in this discussion about the team canvas, is because if an individual expresses, well, I've been asked to create knowledge base articles 5 per month, and that prevents me from providing easier way of doing the work on our product features. So let's talk about that, because you want to improve usability, but my goals are set up to generate more how-to articles. You see, if I was able to actually recommend feature choices, then I would eliminate my how-to article target. So how can we resolve this tension?
Great, thanks.
And over time, Daniel, you know, these will reveal itself, because many teams will not go through a detailed analysis, and that's okay. And that's why the canvas is supposed to be a live document, because you will discover these interactions or these conflicts, and then you'll go back to the canvas to revisit either the team performance goals or the individual performance goals. Hi, Hadi.
Hi. I've been working with a lot of companies, especially large companies. They have all these roles and they are totally sort of embedded into the DNA of the company. And so whenever we are talking about team autonomy, whenever we are talking about all these awesome ideas, we have all these sort of roles that for their existence, they have to sort of fight for everything that is agility and whatever we are talking about. What have you done to get the buy-in and then get the sort of tide on your side to get things moving and make things better?
Right, right. I think that emerges out of this discussion around roles and responsibilities. In a very large Fortune 100 company, we had an individual who was the product owner for the team, but at the same time, the same individual was the lead for that entire department's charitable event. What essentially that meant in October, the product owner is nowhere to be found because they're busy organizing this large charity event, which is part of the corporation's commitment to the community. And we had to have that discussion to say, how are we going to support what the organization wants us to do, knowing that our product owner is one person with same amount of hours per day as everybody else. I don't know if I answered your question, Hadi, but
No, yeah, it's a bit not people involved directly as say a larger team member, but this is more like a structural. So you have the team that you're talking about, and then you have all these other layers that is outside your team, and so you
right.
definitely have no control or no say because it gets all the way to the VP level to get to the CTO, to CEO, and all that. This is sort of their baby that they set it up, and whenever you're challenging sort of the thought that they had initially, how did you deal with that if you had any case like that? Because it's not within your pretty much your immediate team.
Right, right. I like to do the best that the team can do is by building their amplifiers and dampeners. The number one thing you need as a team is to have agreement on how are you going to influence or be influenced by the external forces in the organization. It's very easy for a senior manager or a dysfunctional person to pick off an individual from a team to say, I really love working with that team, but Gene, yeah. And that is a representative heuristic that is picking off individuals and tearing the team apart. On the other hand, if as a team we all agree that whatever is happening is not the right thing, then as a collective you can have a common response and consistent response. At this point, it's very difficult, even for the CEO, to come in and say the entire team is wrong. Yeah, because the entire team is expressing one behavior or one interaction pattern with the rest of the organization. They practically cannot pick a team apart. Yeah, think of it like the Roman defense system, where everyone just huddles together. And if you've seen the movie 300, you can ward off a large horde if you stay together as a team and you know how to respond to whatever onslaught is coming from the rest of the organization.
If I may just drop something in, Dal, actually, I strongly agree with your, perception of this. In large scale Scrum, we address these issues prior to flipping the switch.
Right.
Make sure that teams are not only they're self-formed, right? So we ask teams to form themselves, and that takes a lot of care of some of the potential frictions or misalignments. So management is asked to be on standby,
right,
get involved in the process. So
I definitely feel being proactive about this canvas is half the battle. In other words, as a group, as a team, If you go and create this canvas on your own, saying, here's what our best guess is, and then engage the organization to help you fix it, because everybody wants to fix other people. So they will engage with you to make it better. Yeah. At that point, you are setting the playing field. But if you don't have it, and the organization influences the team members and picks them off individually, then it's very hard to find a coherent approach, because you haven't had the chance to set the playing field. In other words, the self-designing exercise that less folks do is essentially about setting the context and the playing field by deciding what rules are going to be of how we form a team. If you leave it to the larger organization, then they are going to come at those rules from the way they have always done it before.
I have an appreciation for what you've covered, is that I like how you describe boundaries as an organic emergent behavior from a sum of many small things. I also like how you're being direct. I think you're directly pointing the finger back at the individuals and saying, look, if you want to be in a team, it's your responsibility to behave as a team. And then the canvas is a physical manifestation of things that they think are important to do to reach that outcome. I also like how you pointed out a common, problem that happens is when, as soon as you reform people into a team, that the management system around them hasn't like changed or adapted perhaps, and that they then will start trying to show up to the desk of the individuals as they are used to. And so you have that mechanism built in, the amplify and dampen right there immediately to address that.
Right. No, thank you.
Folks, any other questions? Any more questions? I think we have plenty of time to do so, to ask questions. Or perhaps you have any comments to what Davo have shared thus far. The floor is yours. The time is yours. If we don't feel that we need to consume the whole hour, we will probably, adjourn it. But I want to make sure we give plenty of time to people that want to ask questions. We actually do have, 10 plus minutes.
So what is impractical about this? Sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so in our organization, we have cross-functional teams, but their purpose is established by management. They sort of say, okay, here's a team and you're going to work on this service within our overall product architecture. You're going to develop this service so that so they can be consumed by various things built by other teams.
Correct.
And that is pretty common from what I've seen, whether you're in an agile environment or not, it doesn't really matter.
Yes.
So can you fold in your model? So how do you get to the place you're talking about from that starting point?
Right. So the organization, and this is, you should expect that from your organization. No, I mean, let's say if I'm working at Facebook, a team shows up and says, we want to build shampoos. Someone in the organization leadership should say, no, we are like a social networking, we connect people, we don't build healthcare or like beauty products, So we're not saying the team is completely disconnected, but the organization needs to provide this larger purpose to say, here's what we are trying to do as an organization. This is what we expect the team to do, is to build a service. Now let's work together so we can provide the team with a very long-term stable purpose.
Yeah, I mean, there is a reason, because there is a vision, a strategy, there is a portfolio, whatever you define and break down, you have to align this somehow. I mean, not every team can just do whatever they want. And you also want to probably differentiate differentiate between what they're doing and how they're doing. I mean, when we often talk about self-organizing, it's maybe a little bit more related to how, but not always of what, because, right? Sorry,
No, this makes yes, completely agree. I will not be able to pronounce your name correctly.
Baldi.
Sorry.
Baldi.
Valdi, yes, Valdi, I completely agree with you, right? There is the organizational strategy, there is organizational priorities, and you want the team to be aware of the larger context in which they've been asked to do something, build a service, and then have them take ownership of that service. And that handoff, that transition, it needs to happen in collaboration with the senior management. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is a senior manager will often send an email to individuals to say, you're all part of team X, go talk to Waldi and find out what you are expected to do. And that's the interaction we are trying to overcome by saying, let's build this together with participation from senior managers. Where I've seen this work, they, they basically sit together with the team and answer any questions the team may have so they can articulate something very concise and also something that is clear for the team and the organization.
Hi, this is Ron. I think part of the challenge is that always doesn't happen. A lot of organizations or leadership teams that I work for, they may be unclear what the strategy are, they may be searching. But then I've worked with some teams that say, okay, well, we should just stop then. And then you hit a glass wall or what I call a glass ceiling.
Right.
But you know, I'm not sure if you have any pointers, because ultimately you'll just frustrate. If you try to push through a glass ceiling, often who's ever on each side will just get frustrated and won't end up in a good and the best delivery you can do with what you have.
Yes,
Do you have any tactics or any strategies that you have to help work through those types of situations?
Yes, a first acknowledgement that what you're saying is true. When there is a void, either the team will fill it in or some individual in the organization will fill it in for you. Yeah. So with the management canvas, self-managing canvas, the team is taking ownership of articulating that purpose and engaging with the people who will fill the void anyways. So you can then collaborate on what is the right purpose for the team. At minimum, if I as a team, we articulate our purpose and we send it off as an email or whatever medium, so everyone in the organization can see, I will invite criticism. I mean, that's what, right? So that feedback is important, because if no one states what the purpose is, then it just becomes this amorphous thing that continues to shift without us acknowledging what it is.
Oh, so then your canvas then becomes like a vehicle for communication, right? By saying this is what we believe in, just like a project brief would or a brief would before you enter an initiative to say, are we all agreeing on what we're doing as a team even? So this would work in terms of getting the alignment with how you operate as a team management.
Yes, and you should expect corrections. I mean, that's the purpose of this canvas, is to invite that dialogue with the rest of the organization, because these boundaries are often assumed to be fixed, but they are not.
I think to build on that point, my experience, a team itself and the manager of that team may have a strong sense of what they're doing, but it's the interactions with all the other teams in the organization and who owns what in that organization that becomes the real challenge. I mean, when people ask me what my job is, I have several jobs, but one of them I say it's to get the right people to talk about the right things at the right time. And I think this, I could imagine it's kind of an event where you'd have multiple teams together, break out in groups, work on their canvas, present it, and then have that live negotiation right there about how teams interact and whether they're all aligned in terms of meeting the larger goal.
What type of less event is facilitating this conversation?
I have not created this with the intent of using in a specific less context, but I do find it helpful in many different situations. One, obviously, if you're starting from scratch, I would echo what Daniel is saying, is let's do this together when the team is forming. I've also used as a activity at the end of a very tough retrospective to say, it seems to me and to the team that we are not clear on how to work with the organization, how to work with each other, or what our purpose is. So let's take some time aside and reestablish the team canvas. This way, we can at least have a stable point to then build from.
Right. So do you also use this approach to do like a scrum of scrums, like when you bring together the various teams and have them exchange their own their canvases?
The canvases is very much for the team, and the medium of exchange is left up to the teams. You know, I can imagine if different team members or different teams have a forum to interact. It could be the overall retrospective, or it could be something that they are doing together, where they say, okay, let's revisit our canvases. You know,
Can I help out? Though I may actually, offer some ideas here. I mean,
Right.
I'm looking at the canvas. Certainly, this would be instrumental. So, in less adoption, we have these. Depends on how effective and how, how much effort you put into this. Before you flip the switch, we usually look at least a month, maybe up to 2 months of prep work before
Right.
we flip the switch and start sprinting as the last product group. This involves working with senior management, educating everyone, building a backlog, defining a product. So all those things are super critical. If we don't do them up front, we're going to end up with some sort of a quasi scrum, in name only mess. So these kind of exercises of, using canvases and self-identity, those are very instrumental during this phase.
Yes.
And once less adoption is on the way, like individual team retrospectives could be a good way to, to use the canvas like this to do some reflection. We don't explicitly, bombastically say, oh, scrum of scrums, scrum of scrums, scrum of scrums, but on demand, scrum masters and less could do it as needed, not as a mandatory thing, but as needed. And of course, if they want to use a canvas from each individual team, they can do that too, to compare and contrast.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to ask, with all of these challenges, do you work with organizational change management? Because you're not working with one team, you're working with an entire organization, the culture that is in process of shifting.
Right. In terms of the overall change management approach, Karen, the canvas doesn't solve every problem, right? It only expresses what the team understands and what the organization supports as the individual and the team level boundaries. In terms of working with the larger organization, let me share a photo, because when Daniel was asking a question, I was looking for a picture to kind of show this kind of situation we get pulled into from time to time. Yeah. And this is purely looking at the interaction one team has with other groups in the organization as it relates to how work happens. This is one team, yeah, and you can see all the arrows, and this is the reality. I mean, it's messy. It's so messy that you can't untie the knot one at a time. So sometimes you just have to say, we'll do a hard reset, or in the meanwhile, agree on how we are going to cope with each other. At a higher level, what you're seeing is this team is doing work for other teams in the green arrows. And then the dotted arrows are primarily transactional. A team asks for something and the team does it. There's no need for collaboration between teams in this particular case. So oftentimes for larger ecosystems with multiple teams, we'd start with something like this, where we understand what's going on with this team, and then let the team learn from how they want to approach the situation. In this particular example, what you see is this particular team and the team in focus, they have very strong collaboration needs. So from an org design standpoint, it would be better if these two teams were actually one team as a cross-functional unit, because their degree of interaction is extremely high and they need to co-develop solutions together. Whereas a team where you are only providing some transactional kind of information, as a team, you can look at what can I do to make it self-accessible, or is there a way we can reduce that need from the other team? So in a larger section, you're looking to actually redesign the org structure slowly.
Right.
Oh, thank you. Do you ever work with organizational change management, and do organizations ever bring in or have OCM that you work with?
Yes, I mean, I definitely, change management is part of any kind of transformation or even adoption of practices, you know. The classical change management approach based on either ADKAR or the Kotter model views change management in isolation. When in reality, this change management is not a parallel track or a separate thing. It's integral to how the team changes with the change in its organizational practices and goals. So what I like to view as organizational change management is far more active, where you are cycling through, if I were to use ADKAR as an example, you're cycling through the loops more frequently than going through a year-long change effort where you say, let's create awareness for 3 months and then do the rest.
Right. Well, you know, ProSci has adapted to Agile and the iterations are faster. So they're going through the ADKAR, you know, in
Right.
tandem and in pace with the sprints.
Yes, I mean, I'm really happy that they've been able to tune and view it more as circles than steps, you know, visually.
Right.
We still often see OCM people, let's say, trying to ask their role and being a little bit separate. And that's one of the challenges. It's not just the theory described the circle. The challenge is sometimes that these OCM people, they also have to basically, they become a team member, part of the team or part of the team of teams, however you call it, or what type of framework you use. But they need to be somehow involved and integrated, working some type of shared services for several teams, or embedded into one team or two teams and provide these services continuously throughout what you mentioned with cycles, because we want to deliver and ship value frequently and not just, you know, after half year.
Right, right. And Waldy, I mean, you're correct, you know, like I can envision an OCM team forming their own canvas to say, here's how we're going to support all of these teams going through the change process, because there are going to be friction points with respect to what are individual performance goals versus team performance goals. How do we enable the management to support the team's overall purpose for the long term? These involve some degree of change that goes beyond information only, right? I mean, there can be change which is pure information. Here's how, this is where our files are now kept, and people are okay with it. But there are other changes that involve changes in how people interact with the system. In other words, how they act and what they do and how they communicate with each other. So I can totally see an org change management team taking an active role in supporting an ecosystem of teams.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that we did for one of our engagement was to include several people, product owners, scrum masters, OCM, etc., and then, you know, go from left to right of how, you know, some type of our delivery cycle, when we start with, you know, planning, what doesn't matter what framework we apply, if it is less or safe or whatever, what, you know, when we have idea until the end of the delivery and value, what are some of the steps and where do we see, what type of activities do we see from OCM, and are they mandatory, are they optional, you know, and for what activities are they really mandatory, and do we always need them, and do we always need them in a big package, or do we need them in a smaller slice?
Right, right.
Do you have any examples of what a change management team would use as leading and lagging indicators of their success?
Well, again, it's based on the goals of your particular initiative. So, you know, it's.
Have you ever been asked to, like, I've been asked, okay, like set out your quarterly goal for how you're going to change the team. And it's like, well, I'm not sure yet because I'm working with the team and it's really for the team to decide and prioritize.
Mhm.
So I've had one of my, you know, bosses say, no, but you have to plan it out. That's how I'm going to evaluate you. I'm not sure if others have come run into the same challenge where it's where the two worlds sort of meet, right?
Right. I mean, a common team lagging indicator is their work product, right? So what helps you assess the collective work product of the individuals in a team? If I am in software, I will talk about the stability of the product. the amount of time it takes to ship it after we say we are done, right? I'm doing in code.
Yes.
In terms of change management, it could be a survey that goes out to say how comfortable you are with your new roles, new responsibilities, or it could even be a set of, in terms of like, how much does it cost? I mean, it really depends on the team to express how are they going to measure themselves.
Okay.
Because at minimum, you learn about the disconnect from the organization. Because if the organization says, well, we wanted to do agile because we wanted to drive up utilization, and the team saying we want to build stable products, now we have a topic to discuss.
Very good.
Hey,
Yeah,
folks,
and
just a level set. We're slightly off over the time box. We still can keep going, but we're dropping people, losing people in Dawa. I'm not sure if you're.
No, I'm here for a while, so maybe we give people permission to drop off, and then,
Yeah, sure. That would work too.
or we can close the call. And up to you, Gene. You're the host.
Let's give another 5. Let's give another
Okay.
5 at least. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if people have to go because they have other commitments, I mean, yeah, they can go. And if they're recording, if they want to listen more.
Sure.
I had the thought about these goals or objectives or leading indicators, etc. I think it's important to connect it to the overall objectives that you basically derive from your from your strategy, etc. That you derive in say if you use the program PR objectives, then you define the team PR objectives. How do you connect these leading indicators, etc. in less, and what type of objectives, and how do you connect it, and how do you make it applicable, with other teams that are maybe working on something else, so that you can basically achieve a certain strategy or vision or the overall objectives.
Yeah, I will avoid reductionism in mechanical systems, right? Let's say if I want a jet engine to give me X amount of thrust, then I want the RPM for the crankshaft to be this much. Then I want the oil pressure to be this much. Then I want the pressure over here to be that much. That kind of reductionist metrics driven work is possible when the systems don't have a mind of their own. In other words, the crankshaft is not going to wake up in the morning and say, I don't feel great about this. Yeah, it has no agency. In organizations which are different than mechanical systems, you could have a larger organizational purpose and measure to excite and delight our customers. And you can also have a team purpose and performance measures that are completely opposite, because they help you explore areas that are not the current thrust of the organization. So I would not try to connect measures as a spreadsheet, like if I have to get $100, then each team produces $5. I would never do that. I would look at the team as a separate organization. That's why I kind of equate it to building a garden, where your overall purpose with the home garden is to have access to herbs and vegetables. And some plants will do well, some will not. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I guess the example I was giving you with the glass ceilings is where the mechanical sort of collides with the organic nature of the organization, right? And you're in the middle, right? Because you're the change agent.
Right.
Right? Yeah, so now you have to balance it. Oh, well, that's how we're going to get your quarterly goals, but that's not really what the team is. The team is focusing on delivering value to your customer and making sure your customers are delighted so that you can hit your quarterly goal. Oh.
A tip or a heuristic to look for why there is this misalignment is to look for delays. So if the organization set its goal in January and now you are in October, if the organization never changed its goals because COVID happened, you're going to be in constant struggle. Yeah, because the feedback loop for the organization to change or modify its own purpose and goals is slower than the rate at which the team is adjusting to reality. So I would always look for time delays between feedback loops as a general rule to evaluate these system dynamics.
Very good. Good advice.
All right, folks, why don't we wrap? Dowell, do you have your credentials available? I mean, I know you do. So we have them fully transparent. Everyone can make, anyone should take a note of them. They can reach out to you directly for advice or for
Yes.
consultation or anything else for that matter.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, KJ.
Hello? Yes. So we're about to wrap. Thank you all for joining. Dowell, once again, thank you for coming out and doing this. This is very,
Ipona niya.
Okay.
you can ignore that.
It means thank you. It means thank you, not a language. Yeah.
Okay,
you.
very much. That's a pleasure. So we're gonna zap it, wrap it, and post it, and hopefully people will replay if they would like. And again,
Thank you.
Dowell,
Thank you so much, Daval and G, for setting this up and everything.
Waldemar, our pleasure.
Yeah.
So let's call it a day. Thanks again, Dowell. You and I can reconnect, right? We will plan
Yes.
anyway. Oh, and do send me the deck ASAP so I can make it available to people.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for joining. Yep.